Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Lamar, the host of the Youth Leaders in Wealth Management podcast. And today I'm ecstatic to be joined by Mr. Jonathan Kuttin, the CEO of Kuttin Wealth Management and Forbes #1 New York State in-state wealth advisor. So, John, thank you so much for joining me today. And how are you this afternoon?
I'm great, Ryan. I was waiting for you to have me as a guest, my friend. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm super pumped that you're happy to be here, and I'm excited to open up this conversation and really get to ask you some good questions that I feel like I haven't had the opportunity to ask. So one that I do know a little bit about, but I want to ask a little bit more on details on it. So obviously you decided to go into the wealth management career fields, but I want to ask why wealth management specifically. What made you pursue a career in the wealth management industry compared to other financial avenues?
Sure, that's a great question. And you know me, Ryan. I'm going to be hard to corral on this podcast. But I'm going to start by giving you a compliment, young man. So, Ryan interned with my firm this past summer and was absolutely phenomenal. So much that we've invited them to join our firm. And I think what you and a couple of the other guys that I know help you with this project here have done is amazing and kind of shows your entrepreneurial spirit. So I wanted to give you a little props up front. And I think it's really very entrepreneurial what you're doing. And I think you're making a difference in a lot of young people's lives and take some of your experiences and share. So kudos to you. And to answer your question, it's a bit of a long story, but I think it will be relatable to your listeners. So in my junior year of college, so my guess is a lot of your listeners are juniors or seniors in college and kind of thinking about their career path, my mom and dad actually claimed bankruptcy. So I was a junior at State University of New York in Albany, and I had grown up thinking that we were doing pretty well financially as a family. You don't know when you're a kid always. My parents did a pretty good job of, keeping that away from the kitchen table. And that was my wake up call, Ryan. So I vividly remember how that made me feel. And I remember feeling like I wanted to make sure I was in control of my own financial future and could also help other people in the financial world and other individuals actually plan their own financial future. So I went down to the Career Placement Center. Back then, there were billboards. There was no internet, and there was a posting for a company back then called IDS Financial Services, which stands for Investors Diversified Syndicate. And what's really interesting, Ryan, is I think we're on video here too. So this is actually from IDS. So this is vintage, and IDS eventually became American Express. And you can see the American Express logo. And this is actually my letter of recommendation. My wife found it and framed it for me for the advisor that I actually interned for when I was your age, or some of your listeners' age. I guess a year younger than you. So 1994, I had my 30-year anniversary, November 23rd of this year. I've stayed with the same company for almost 30 years. But I share that. So I went down to the Career Placement Center and I saw IDS had an ad. And the tagline was, "A great financial advisor has the heart of a social worker and the mind of a capitalist." And that's something we talk a lot about inside of my organization. Is a great financial advisor, part of the social worker means you have to really care about people and want to make a difference and help people achieve their goals. Not everyone actually has the knowledge and expertise about finances. And that's just a big problem in our country, in my opinion, is there's financial illiteracy where there's not a great job by universities, et cetera, unfortunately, in my opinion, to actually teach people about smart money lessons, so on, et cetera. And the mind of the capitalist, you can take that one or two ways. It could be understanding the capital markets and being a good investor, but you can also think about it as a financial advisor. You're really building a business for yourself, right? So being a capitalist and being able to be completely in control of your own destiny financially, and the way that you actually situate your life as you ultimately build your business. So for me, it was my parents' bankruptcy, wanting to be in control, and at a young age, knowing that I just didn't want to ever be in a position that way. And if I could help others not have financial issues by just making smart, sound decisions, I thought it would be beneficial to be able to make an impact that way.
Yeah, and that quote, when I first heard it, really struck me, having the heart of a social worker and the mind of a capitalist, because that's when everything kind of clicked in my head about what I was doing and where I was going. Because when I was a freshman in college, I was going to be a doctor. I wanted to study medicine and help people that way, because I always knew I wanted to help people. And I had that heart of a social worker. But in the back of my mind, I had that mind of a capitalist, right? I wanted to make a good living for myself, and I understood the markets. This is what I did in my free time. I was studying personal finance and figuring out how to, I opened a Roth IRA when I turned 18. I was into this stuff. And then it took, when I was at Stony Brook my first year, it took until I took a real finance class that I connected the two interests of helping people and money and all the capitalist world that we live in, and figuring out, I'm like, hey, this wealth management field is what I'm interested in, right? And I think you hit it on the head there, that there's so much illiteracy in this country right now about how we're being taught finances. Like in high school, I didn't really learn anything about finances. I don't know what I didn't know what taxes were or what a checkbook was, which, it's a little different nowadays, right? Not as many checks, but we didn't learn anything, right? We learned a little bit about what compound interest was. And that was one of the first things that sparked my interest, looking at those graphs and how much money can grow. And I wanted to be part of something that was going to help benefit the country and going forward in that direction, in the same way that you were explaining here, right? So providing education in the same way that my mother is she's a first grade teacher. And so education is in my blood too, right? So I wanted to help provide the greater organization, greater community with this type of ability to support themselves and make stronger financial decisions. So I'm glad that we kind of agree on that same page.
Yeah, agree. And you talk about compound interest, right? Some call it the eighth wonder of the world, right? And when you think about the role of being a financial advisor, and I'm biased here, Ryan, but I've got your listeners' ears for a minute. My belief is I'm a father of four boys, right? And you know that you've got to meet, I think, three of my four boys actually, right? So one of my boys now works inside of our business. One is a senior at Yale University. One is a junior at University of Miami. And one is going to go to Johns Hopkins. So all amazing schools, right? And particularly my older two boys will have choices, or had choices, right? And they could have gone into the investment banking world or the private equity world or many different facets of finance. And, what I can share, and those are amazing roles. And that is what I think a lot of young people go to school. And if they are in the finance world or the economics world, their goal is to go get a job at one of those firms. And those are amazing firms. And very, great salaries to start and upside potential, and amazing. And you'll work really hard if you're lucky enough to get one of those jobs. But I feel like very few at that level really look closely at the wealth management field. And I think it's starting to change a little bit, Ryan. And I think you're part of the change, right? Because I think what young people are starting to recognize is the ability to be in control of your own destiny, to have quality of life, to make a meaningful difference in other people's lives. Not to say private equity or investment banking doesn't make a difference and doesn't help people. But man, you work grueling hours. And in my experience, those don't end. And one of the things that I like best about the wealth management space, and I don't think young people fully understand it. See, Ryan, when I first started, I'll share, I had an internship up at Albany. We talked about the person that I interned for, that I showed the letter from before. And the person that I interned for, I won't use his name, but here's what I remember. And I think I told all the interns this story when you guys started this past summer. But I remember a couple things. One, he was probably in his 30s when I interned for him, probably mid 30s. I remember him having a picture of his wife and three little kids that looked like a beautiful family. And I vividly remember he drove a Porsche Carrera convertible, and he showed up to work at around 10:30 or 11 every day with a gym bag over his shoulder, and came into the office, and then he left around 4 to go to his kids' soccer game and baseball game and dance class, etc. And what struck me about that was he had balance in his life. He wasn't commuting into New York City, right? Or some, wherever you are, some major city. And for some people, that's what they want. What I really wanted was balance. I wanted to be able to have family life. I never wanted to miss any of my kids' sporting events or important school functions. And I want to say this the right way. For my first probably 10 years in the business, I worked 70 or 80 hours a week, just like I would have in the investment banking world or the private equity world. But I was building something that was mine. The client relationships, and this is a really important piece. Once you're able to successfully build a wealth management business, which is hard, what you're actually doing is you're building relationships with maybe 150, maybe 200, maybe 300 families that have bought into you. You have a personal relationship. It's not a transaction. Many of the clients in my firm started with me in 1994. 30 years later, they're still clients. Their children are clients. In some cases, we have the grandchildren are now clients. So we have 3 generations of clients. And I just share that because I think sometimes young people are blinded by short-term money and being able to live in the Big Apple or live in Chicago or live in, whatever city it is that's near you. And ultimately, I think what happens is there's this crossover that if you put the same work ethic in, I think you get to a much better place where you can have a better life balance and better economics and really be in control of your own destiny.
I think you described it perfectly. And one of the reasons why I chose wealth management is the balance that I've seen. Like I would hear about, just reading about people's stories and careers, working 110 hours in the city and stuff like that. And just not really changing once they got to a more senior level of employing. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to have the balance that you were talking about. I want to be able to go to my kids' sporting events and not miss anything at their schools and show up to the dances and be a good dad, be a good husband, son, friend. That was important to me, just as important as money is. And I think that you're right that the short-term money blinds people to how the actual career can play out. And that was a big thing. Like when I first started networking and talking to people, I would hear people that were like, oh, you got to go into investment banking. You got to do private equity. You got to do this now. You got to do that. And you got to do that. And, then you're going to work here for this many years. And it was like, whoa, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I want to have like you said, meaningful relationships with people and help and actually make a difference in some people's lives in a more, personal way, right? So maybe on the investment banking and the private equity, you're changing people's lives from a little bit farther degree away. But to be able to see someone's face when you help them make like a great financial decision that helps send their kid to college or help them purchase that dream home or that dream car, like that's something that I want to pursue to be able to help provide those moments. And for people like, myself, my parents, my family, just growing up in a regular middle class family with my mom being a teacher and my dad being a police officer, I was like, I want to help people like that too. I don't want to just go into the city and completely change who I came from. And being in wealth management just felt like the perfect opportunity. And a big reason why Youth Leaders in Wealth Management was started is because I wanted to share that with the people. Like you said earlier, that there's not very many resources, not only for financial literacy, but for people that are interested in the wealth management industry because of that emphasis on private equity and investment banking and all the other great careers that are out there that are great careers. Don't get me wrong. It just weren't for me, right? And I wanted to bridge the gap between the resources that universities were providing and the resources that we actually need to succeed. And everything that I've learned from talking to great people like you and, how to reach out and find these opportunities is something that I felt like I could share and genuinely make an impact in someone's life. And
Yeah.
just to tie that a knot on that, something that Jake Dunlap said to me that really resonated with me is, if you help 5 people become better, they can help 5 people become better, and then those 5 people can help 5 people, and then it's like a web of positive influence that you send in that direction, right? So wealth management is part of that web, and so is youth leaders in wealth management. So super excited about this.
Yeah, so super well said, Ryan. A couple things that I would just share. And yes, Jake is a smart man for sure. And that's that heart of the social worker, right? Where you talked about police officers and teachers, and there were different facets of the wealth management space. My biggest satisfaction is helping what we call the mass affluent, right? So when a client has 500,000 to 5 million of investable assets, that's considered mass affluent. North of that might be considered more high net worth or into the realm of ultra high net worth. So we do all of those things at our firm. But what's really nice is that people who need planning, if you've got $10 million, you're probably good, right? You'll probably be okay. Yes, you can do some creative planning and tax strategies and estate planning, and there's work, and we do some of that work as well as anybody in the industry. But man, when you can help a police officer and a teacher send their kids to college debt-free, retire at 55, be able to have a second home, right, a vacation home, and be able to reach their dreams, you're actually making a significant difference in someone's life. And, let's face it, Ryan, outside of health, the number one stressor in people's life is money, right? And that's the reality of it. And it's not usually because people don't make enough money, right? There are folks who have issues that just simply don't make enough money, and that's a problem in our country. But there are a lot of people in the middle class who don't understand the power of savings, who don't understand how difficult it is once you use credit, right, to buy goods, credit cards and things along those lines, the bad kind of debt, how hard it is to pay that stuff off once you're paying 18 or 20% interest, so on, et cetera. So when you can help regular people make better decisions and change their life so that they could reduce their stress level and meet their dreams, man, you're making a difference, and you're building relationships for a lifetime. The other piece or two that, as you were talking before, that I wanted to hit on is, when you think about the career and you talk about those 80 or 90-hour weeks, right, weeks working in some type of corporate finance jobs, it's not that you won't, to build a business, put in long, grueling hours. Part of what I really like about the wealth management industry is you have to constantly evolve, right? And one of the things I could share, Ryan, is I love the wealth management industry. It's my hobby. It's my sport, right? So it started about how to provide advice to clients, and then it morphed into how can I help more people, right, by becoming a better leader and ultimately helping my advisors and my team help more and more and more people. So you constantly need to continue to reinvent yourself. And to me, the definition of kind of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And I think a lot of times what happens in corporate jobs, when you're not really building a business for yourself, right? And by the way, you could build a business for yourself inside of an existing business. That's what we do inside of our firm. But what happens is you just show up to work every day and you do the same darn thing, right? You're analyzing a different company, as an example, to invest in or to help sell, or so on, et cetera. In the wealth management business, you are a marketer, your business development, you're the internal operations team, you're doing financial planning, you're doing asset management, your customer service, right? Your R&D, all of the facets of the business, you actually have a role in, right? And in most wealth management firms, they're smaller businesses. So therefore, you have to become a really well-rounded business owner and entrepreneur, which really means, Ryan, no day is the same, right? Which to me has been one of the real benefits of working inside of the financial planning wealth management industry.
And I think that segues perfectly into my next question about the industry is, what do you believe are the key skills and qualities for us the younger generation to start developing as we get into the industry?
Yep. So there's a few things that I would share there. So one, I am, as you mentioned, a ranked financial advisor in the industry. I've been lucky enough to get lots of accolades, and it's been a team effort, by the way. But here's what I'll share with you, Ryan. I was a sociology major, business minor. I played college soccer. I had a really good time in college until I was a junior. Okay. I had a good time after that as well, but that's when it clicked for me that I really needed to focus on my career. Okay. So I believe what we do as financial advisors is not rocket science. There's licensing, there's a lot to learn. But over time, there's more and more sophisticated strategies to understand. But the number one, one or two pieces is one, it's grit. You have to work really hard, right? Two is you have to be someone who can influence others, right? You could call it have some sales skills. You can call it influencing skills, but you have to actually be able to help people take action, right? And the third piece I would say is perseverance. It's not easy, right, to build a business. It's, I always share, I can remember when I first started in the business, working Friday nights, working Saturday mornings, right? Where my buddies were out at a bar on a Friday night, right? Or sleeping in on a Saturday morning. And I was doing it not because I had to. I was doing it because I had a goal to grow a business, right? So being able to persevere, in my opinion, is probably the number one skill set that you need to really have in the financial services industry, and to be able to ultimately bet on yourself.
Yeah, and I love the part about grit, and it's a word that you familiarize me with, in a way to put a point on it, right? To work hard and perseverance to have a goal and not let anything stop you, right? And having friends that are doing different things than you, and maybe not pushing you towards your goal is okay, but going past your basic needs into your wants, right? That's something that you always say too. So how do you take your goals, like especially at our age, like the goals of being successful and starting a business or building something for your own, and to continue to push it further, and I think that those two, grit and perseverance, I think are the biggest ones for me, and how I've found success going through this stuff, and just keep going, and wanting to keep pushing towards the goals. And I think that's super cool that you mentioned that, and it's something that I've learned from you guys, and I'm super excited to keep using it going forward.
Yeah, and Ryan, I'd add to that, mentorship is unbelievably important. So here's what I know. The people listening to your podcast right now are driven. Not a lot of young people that are taking time to listen to a podcast, or watch a podcast in order to think about their career when they're in their 20s, right? What you're doing right now is not normal. It's not typical, right? And you've heard me talk about, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So when you can join a culture, and there are lots of different wealth management firms out there that are looking for young, talented, smart people. There's a shortage in our industry of talented young people. There are more advisors in their 60s than there are in their 20s and 30s. So therefore, we need more smart young talent to be able to be kind of that second or third generation of advisors inside of the industry. But the most important thing to me, Ryan, if I was to give a young person advice, is make sure that if you do want to go into the wealth management industry, that you join a firm that has mentorship, that there are women and men inside of that organization that you want to emulate, right? Because it really is The people, particularly when you're young, the 5 people you spend the most time with are going to be who you're most like. And if you can learn from great mentors, that's unbelievably valuable. The other piece I would share, I didn't hit the question that you asked me before, is, and by the way, you're really good at this. I'm really good at this, is get out of your comfort zone. Okay. So you got to meet Ray Kelly, who's our leadership development coach inside of the organization. And Ray's got this thing where he'll ask someone, play along with me, Ryan, give me the wrong answers, if that makes sense, right? If you had to choose from between comfort and discomfort, what do most people choose?
Comfort.
They choose comfort, right? Everybody wants to be comfortable. In fact, your mindset and your brain is actually structured in such a way that you're supposed to stay comfortable. You're supposed to not do things that could hurt you, right? You want to stay in the zone of comfort. But the follow-up question to that is, if you can choose between growth and discomfort, what would you choose?
You want to choose growth, right?
And most people choose growth, right? Choosing growth and actually doing it are two very different things, right? So you're really good, Ryan, at choosing becoming uncomfortable. This podcast is uncomfortable. Asking me to be on it was probably uncomfortable. A lot of what you do, reaching out to folks, is uncomfortable. But I share that most people also have asked, would you rather give help, Brian? I don't think you've heard this one before. Or would you rather ask for help? What would you rather do? Ask for help or give help?
I'd rather give help.
I'd rather give help. And just about everybody would rather give help. So everybody's favorite radio station, right, is What's in It for Me, WIFM, What's in It for Me. And what people like to do is they like to actually talk about themselves. Look at me. I can't shut up right now, right? You invited me on your podcast, and I'm enjoying telling people my story. So if you call any financial advisor in the industry or email any financial advisor in the industry who's super successful, and you approach it in the right way, saying, my name is X, I'm a junior at XYZ University, and I've found you on LinkedIn and have done a little research, and you've built what looks to be a hugely successful career. I was wondering if you would be willing to give me 15 minutes of your time to ask you some questions about the wealth management industry. I would be very grateful. I would be shocked if you hit the top 100 advisors on the Barron's list with that email and ask them. I'd be shocked if 50% of those folks didn't take a meeting with you to tell you about their career. And if you are the type of person who wants to be in the industry, choose discomfort. That's uncomfortable to reach out. But what you'll find on the other end is somebody who can't wait to tell you about their journey, about what they would do if they were you, what advice they would give you when they were young and your age, etc. Because when asked to give help or ask for help, no one likes to ask for help. Everybody likes to give help. Be the person that's asking for help, but make sure you're asking the right people who actually have value to provide.
And that's exactly how I found this opportunity and found out about you, right? So there was a kid from my university. I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but there's a kid from my university that I had a call with, and I'm like, hey, like I'm looking for opportunities. Like, where do you think I should look? And he's like, you should look at the Forbes Best Wealth Advisors list. And lo and behold, I saw your name and I messaged you on LinkedIn, and then we got an interview and everything, and it just like one little tiny connection like that can change your life, right? So I'm also the president of the Real Estate Society here at Binghamton, and I just gave like a workshop on networking and the importance of it, and that's one of the things I stress the most, and that I try to stress on the Youth Leaders of Wealth Management platform as well, is that one single seed that you plant with networking can sprout into a massive tree, right? So it's and a lot of this is about numbers games. Like I've had many conversations to come to the point where I get to have this conversation with you, and I get to come in and work with your guys' firm and learn so much, right? It's a numbers game, and then like you hit it's so perfect to say that it's it's about being uncomfortable. Like it was not easy for me to start doing something like this. Like there's a million different reasons why not to, and there's a million different reasons why I can't and I shouldn't. And you got to push past those to find something that's great. And it just reminds me of this past Saturday about like getting up early and like, I could have had every reason to not get up and and learn that morning, but I made myself get up and it was beneficial, and it always is, right? So it's how do you push past your comfort zone, and just a question on that is like, how do you personally find yourself pushing past your comfort zone and getting uncomfortable? Is I don't think that it's easy for everybody, as it has been. Not that I say that it's easy for me or you, but what has been your methods for pushing out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I'm going to say is, as you were talking about networking, there's an old saying, right, which is your network is more valuable than your net worth, right? Your network is more valuable than your net worth. And it's the truth, right? A lot of life is who you know. And Ryan, you've heard me talk about the triple E's, right? So the triple E's, do you remember what they stand for?
Education, environment, and
Experience. Yep.
experience. There we go.
So it's your education, it's your environment, and your experience. Okay. And go back to my mom and dad claiming bankruptcy. Go back to Ryan's mom and dad being a police officer and a school teacher, which are amazing jobs, by the way, right? But I didn't grow up in a wealthy environment. Ryan didn't grow up in a wealthy environment. Yet I'm a Barron's Hall of Fame advisor. I'm a Forbes ranked advisor. We're managing billions and billions of dollars of assets. But I didn't know any of those people. That makes sense. I had to go out and build my network. I had to go out and get uncomfortable. And Ryan had to do the same thing. So they say success leaves clues, right? Success does leave clues. And if I'm a listener right now, regardless of what you came from, by the way, if you came from money and you came from a great background and you're at a prestigious university, amazing. It's a little bit of an advantage. Use that to your advantage. But if you didn't, it means that you've got to get more uncomfortable to be able to get to a point that you're actually building, your overall network as well. And then, what was the question you asked me, Ryan? It was about what drives me, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm distracted, Ryan. I don't know if you can see behind me, but do you see someone walking in circles on the telephone? Do you know who that familiar face is?
If I had to guess, that would be Sean.
Yes. So Sean, we're giving you a little shout out on this. We've seen you walk by 16 times on the phone, and Ryan and I both know that's how Sean, who's my oldest son, does some prospecting, and I think Sean is a bit of a mentor to Ryan as well. So
Absolutely.
I just found it amusing that I saw him walk by like 2 or 3 times. So you mentioned this before, Ryan, which is needs versus wants, and I'll tie it this way. There's a great book that maybe you want to put in your show notes for everybody. The author's name is Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Dan Sullivan runs a company called The Strategic Coach, which is the largest entrepreneurship coaching company, I believe, in the country, maybe in the world, because he's based in Canada as well. But the name of the book is 10X is Easier Than 2X. And here's the basics of the story. Most people on the planet, over 90% of them, act in a very 2X way. And what do I mean by that? Is their activities and their habits and the things that they do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis are thinking in terms of, how do I, as an example, go from, if you're in the workforce, making $50,000 a year to $100,000 a year. There's a way of thinking, right, which is 2X, to think about, how do I go from 50 to 100,000, which in the universe, $100,000 is pretty good income to earn, right? But man, what would happen if you said, how do I go from making $50,000 a year to $5 million a year? All of a sudden, your approach is much different, right? You're not thinking, and a 2x had a double, but you're thinking in that case had a more than 10x, right? It'd be 500,000 when actually 10x. I'm thinking had a 100x. So that's a big part of it is, Ryan, being able to have a vision, think about the future that you want for yourself. You started to do it before. I want to have a wife, kids, coach their teams, have some free time, build a business, help people, make a great living, so on, etc. That's the start of a vision. The more that crystallizes, and you can think about, well, I'm assuming you're 21 now, Ryan?
Yeah.
Right? So when I'm 31, what does it look like? Right? And if you can actually think in those terms and then work backwards and start to build new habits that align with that new you, ultimately that stuff really works. The other thing that I would share is what to tie it back, most people just work through their needs. Their needs are, I want to have a decent house, I want to have a little money in the bank, I want to be able to go on a vacation here and then. Those are your needs. Deep down, your wants might be a beachfront home, right? It might be a private jet. It might be to have major impact in your community by giving lots of money to charity, right? But people don't work towards their wants. They work towards their needs. You have to train yourself to believe in your wants. And wants have to tie into a greater why, right? So one of the things that I learned at the firm that I work for today, Ameriprise, years ago, is this process called the Woody Woofy process, which is an acronym. And Ryan, I know you got a chance to get exposed to the Woody Woofy process. So Woody Woody stands for what do you want for yourself? And in fact, that's what it looks like, right? The Woody Woofy process for those who are watching on video. And it's really a process for goal achievement. And it's about how do you actually first get very, very in touch with your own core values, right? So what makes you tick as a human? And by the way, these will change over your life. Some will stay consistent usually, but as you get older, right, different things will become important. When I was your age, one of my core values was I wanted success. I wanted to make a lot of money, right? Well, now I've become fairly successful. And for me, it's still important, and I'm glad I did it. But man, there are other things that are more valuable to me today that are part of my core values that I couldn't imagine before I had kids and a wife and all of those things. So they will change over time. But man, when you can understand your why, Ryan, and understand why it is you're working towards what you're working on, that's the fire in the belly. And a lot of people don't ever get really, really clear on their why. The Woody Woofy process helps you understand your values. And then it's a process to help you every year think about what you want to accomplish professionally, personally, and from a self-development perspective. And that's been one of our organization's key to success, is actually helping our folks, the people, the advisors and the operations people and the planning and the power planners and the analysts and the business development folks in the organization all get clear on building, I call it Quan from the old Jerry Maguire movie, which you might be too young to. Do you ever watch?
I haven't seen it.
You have or haven't?
Have not.
Oh my goodness, you got to go watch Jerry Maguire. So all listeners, you got to go watch Jerry Maguire. Tom Cruise is in it. He's a sports agent. I promise you guys, you will love it. But the homework is to figure out what Quan is, right? And Quan it's having it all. It's having family, health, money, happiness. The whole kind of enchilada is what that's really about.
Yeah, it's something that I've thought about a lot recently, like my goals, and the Woody Woofy process has been so crucial for figuring that out. And the whole value system is something that was brought to my attention this summer too, right? It's how do you figure out what drives you and what that fire in your gut, like you said. And I've definitely done a lot of self-introspection and figuring out why I want these things and what my values are. And I can thank you guys for that, really, figuring out why I'm doing the things that I want to do and making me spend more time and more emphasis on the things that I do care about and less on the things I don't. And I think that's important from a self-development perspective. If a career is important to me and not going out on Friday night, that's not helping me towards that. And my career is my number one goal right now. It's like, why am I doing that? It's important to have fun and everything, right? But it's that's the game that I play with myself, is that how do I use my time to the most efficient manner possible. Which I think the goal process really helps you figure out what you want to use your time for. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I have a question about challenges. So can you share any challenges you face as a leader in wealth management and how you've overcome them throughout your career?
Oh boy, yeah, I have lots of challenges every day, Ryan. Every single day, lots of challenges. What I would share for me, my biggest challenge has been um, creating an infrastructure that is truly what I call a vision-based leadership structure, right? So, as you know, Ryan, our firm's vision statement is that KWM is not only a Barron's Hall of Fame practice, but we're known industry-wide as a supercharged leadership development factory. We develop level 5 leaders. And, to me, leadership is everything. Okay, you're a leader at school. You're a leader if you have a brother or sister. You're a leader to your mom or dad. You're a leader in your community. You're a leader at work. We're all leading, whether you formally have that title or not. You play sports, you're a leader. So to me, everything rests and falls on leadership. And I could do a whole session on this, Ryan, but I'll give you the cliff note, right? There's really 3 types of leadership the way that I define it. There's what I'll call the old school leadership, which is command and control, right? So if you had a coach that was a yeller and said it's my way or the highway, that's usually a command or control, or a teacher who was really stern and this is my classroom and you can't use the bathroom until I tell you to, that kind of thing. That's a command and control style of leadership. There's a second style of leadership called appeasement leadership. And appeasement leadership is everything is managed by committee, right? Where we want to be very inclusive and ask everybody for their opinion. But a lot of times when someone's in appeasement-based leadership, they have a hard time making a decision. Therefore, things don't generally get done because we don't want to disturb anybody or make anybody unhappy or uncomfortable. And then the third, which is where I try to be, is a vision-based leader. So a vision-based leader is creating a vision that's big enough that the people inside of your organization can actually see a future for themselves where they can get what they want inside of your vision because it's so great. And I'd say I have had lots of challenges throughout the years, but I'd say my current biggest challenge is what we talked about a little earlier, right? Which is helping people in the organization actually believe that they're capable of more than just meeting their needs, and to be more of a 10x thinker and believe that there's a bigger and brighter future. Ryan, the hardest thing to do is to change a habit, right? The average human has something like, and this is a slightly made up statistic, but directionally right, 35,000 thoughts a day. And something like 80% of them are the same. And the majority of them are negative. I'm not good enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not smart enough, right? They don't like me, all of those type of things. And you've heard me talk about this before, Ryan. You've got the brain, we talked about before, wired to keep you comfortable. And then you've got the mind, which actually controls the brain. So I've actually always looked at it where I had someone share this with me and it stuck. There's a violin. The violin is an operating instrument like the brain. Okay. The bow is how you control the violin. If you give that bow to someone who's a master at playing the violin, they can make sweet music, right? But if you give it to me, Ryan, who's never played the violin, not very good sounds are going to come out of that violin. So the mindset is the bow. And what people have a hard time doing is unlearning the habits and the routine that they're in and actually thinking different so that they can control their brain or the violin differently. And that's what change ultimately is. And that's my number one thing, if you will, that I'm constantly trying to do, is to teach people that anything's possible, how to actually control their mindset. And it goes back to, you referenced the Saturday morning session that you've been attending since the summer now and still doing it while you're at college, which is amazing, right? Imagine 25 or 30 people out of 250 people in an organization getting together every Saturday morning to just get better. Talk about goals, talk about mindset, talk about leadership. Man, when you hang out with 25 people every Saturday morning who are just trying to get better and talking openly and trying to help each other, it can't help but start to change your mindset. And it's music to my ears, no pun intended with the violin analogy before, to hear you say being part of our ecosystem has, I get like little chills when I say it, but it's changed your mindset a little bit. It's made you think about Woody Woofy, and it made you think about your core values and think about your career, helping people and all of those type of things. That's leadership, right? Leadership is influencing someone to do something that they wouldn't do without you. And what I'm proud of is that it wasn't me necessarily, but our culture is actually doing its job, because a smart, hardworking young person like you can come into the culture and start to see a bigger vision for themselves.
Absolutely. The change in mindset and vision from when I started to before completely evolved over this last summer, right? And you said it right, that it wasn't necessarily like a specific person, but the culture itself, that being around, surrounded by people that want to get better, and even not just on the Saturday sessions, but just throughout the internship, connecting with these people, seeing what it's like to work hard at, my age, and different stages of life where people are still putting in that same amount of effort, just in different levels of tasks, and learning like, hey, I can do this at, when I get this age, or this could be a career path and I can work hard in this way, and this is how I can grow. And it really opened up my mind to so many different opportunities and paths to go down, right? And it's been so beneficial, just learning everything that you guys have put out. And from a leadership standpoint, I couldn't have asked for anything more, because it's leadership is always something that has been in my core values, whether I knew it or not. But being able to influence people positively, and to do something that they wouldn't do without you is always something that I'm interested in. And I think that falls in line for me with helping people. And this has been just an amazing place for me to accomplish and work towards my goals and establish that 10x level of thinking, and not on the 2x scale. Because for someone that's from me or your background, it's very easy to fall into that 2x mindset of like, I just want to get like a couple steps ahead, because everybody wants to grow. Everyone wants to be better than their parents or better than their friends or whatever it may be. But, it doesn't always have to be too much better or anything like that. But how do you break out of that mindset and think bigger so that these small changes that you're looking for can come so much faster? And that's really what I've learned is how to think like that, and how to grow that way. And I can't thank you guys enough for that, for sure.
You got it. No, you're going to do special things, Ryan. You got a great maturity, and already the beginning of an amazing mindset and vision for what you have in your future, which can't wait to help you unlock, more and more of it. I have one last thought, Ryan. I know we're getting a little tight on time. I see you giving me the stink eye a little, but my
No.
last thought for for our listeners, and this about me, Ryan, is the opportunity to learn from unbelievably successful people is unheard of right now. When you go back, for me in 1994, when I graduated from college, I had to go to this place called the library in order to get a book to read, right? You all can go on your iPhone and download a podcast or a book or audio book or a YouTube video or, whatever it may be. The amount of information from unbelievably successful people that you can read about their life story and their experience is unbelievable. So, and don't get me wrong, you're a college student right now, read your school books, study hard, get good grades. But man, if you have a little extra time and wealth management is of interest, go deep on wealth management podcasts, on leadership podcasts. Ryan, I've got my own podcast, as you know, called Quantum Growth for Financial Advisors. Michael Kitces has a great podcast. Frank LaRosa has a great podcast. Mindy Diamond has a great podcast. There's lots. I'm happy to give you a list for your, for your followers and listeners to listen to. But little known fact, I consume about 15 to 20 hours a week worth of books and or podcasts, right? So when you think about that, man, if you can go really deep on learning about something that's going to be your profession, right? Whether it be leadership, wealth management in general, for that matter, If you're interested in going to private equity, there's podcasts on private equity. If you're interested in going to just about anything, you can actually find it. Man, the advantage you will get and the things that it will open your mind up to. And then what happens is it leads to the next thing, which leads to the next thing. And you just go an inch wide and a mile deep. And then what happens is you just keep getting better and better and better. And that's how I look at it, Ryan. I was out doing my morning walk, probably about 5:30 this morning for an hour. It was still dark out. Everybody else was sleeping. Everybody else was asleep. I was listening to a podcast, Getting Better, and it felt good, right? And it felt good, and I'm, in a pretty good spot in my career. Imagine the compounding effect of you or your listeners doing that at 21 for the next 10 years. Imagine consuming 10 or 15 hours a week worth of content that's really good for you on all of these things over and over. And I know, Ryan, you and a couple of your buddies that, we had the privilege to work with this summer and are part of your group here, you're all going deep on those things, and you guys just going to be killers. So success leaves clues. So some of the listeners go deep on some of that stuff.
Yeah, it seems like attacking those opportunities and really learning is crucial for our age. So thank you for sharing that. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and giving me some time to ask you some questions. I'm super thrilled for you giving me the opportunity to ask them. And this has been awesome. And I really can't thank you enough for coming on.
You got it, my friend. Well, great job. You're the host with the most, and do me a favor, enjoy a little college and go have a little fun too.
I will. Thank you very much. And if there's anything that you want to plug, I know you mentioned your podcast or stuff like that for other people to listen to, you can go ahead. But if not, I'll leave everything in the description that you'd like for me to share.
Yeah, that's great. Podcast is Quantum Growth for Financial Advisors, which you all might find interesting. And if anybody ever has any questions or has an interest in internship or anything along those lines, feel free to go through Ryan. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Jonathan Kuttin, Kuttin, and would love to see if I could help. If not me, I know a lot of people maybe could help you in an area where you might live as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on, and this has been great, and I'm super excited for the future going forward. So thank you so much.
Likewise, you got it right.
Bye-bye. All right.